live stream here on Containing COVID, KUM News Takeover, Guam's favorite. Let's keep it going here. I wanted to get FEMA Frank, Frank Mansell, onto the show. Of course, good morning.
Hi, Frank.
Good morning. Sorry, I had to take you off mute.
No worries.
Chris,
he's got jokes.
Well, you got jokes.
Chris.
Yes, I'm here.
I wake up in the middle of the night and I wash my hands. Never done that before.
Well, you're welcome, Frank.
Oh, my goodness.
So I guess update on, we got some questions for you, but I guess we'll just start on, can we just get a general update on the FEMA response locally here with COVID-19?
Well, I can tell you that more commodities have come in to the island. And again, I'm giving you numbers of materials that we actually can put our hands on or know that we've passed along to the territory. N95 masks are at 51 million. Surgical...
51 million?
Pardon me?
You said 51 million?
51 million.
Mm-hmm.
Surgical masks are 43 million, gowns 10 million, face shields 9 million, coveralls, I don't know why, but they're only 400. Gloves are 60 million. Those are all items that were pushed out under the Strategic National Stockpile.
To Guam?
Guam has its request.
Okay.
And of its requests, we've delivered 3,000 biohazard bags, 40 million gloves, 1,800 test kits, which are swabs in the media, and a total of 59 ventilators. There's been 3,000 gloves donated and 5,500 N95 masks that were donated. To date, FEMA has obligated $9.8 million in either direct federal assistance or mission assignments.
9.8 million?
That's correct.
When you say that, what do you mean? That it was like
Well, it means
turned
obligated.
over?
It means that those are funds that the value of the commodities we've delivered.
Okay.
Okay, Frank, let's just get right into it here. I've been told that FEMA, I don't know if you can comment on this, if it's at your level, but that the way, as it stands right now, the quarantine facilities being used by the government of Guam, the hotels, we don't have the paperwork, not reimbursable. How accurate is that at this moment?
Until we have the paperwork, there's no review to conduct. So at this point, we have to see paperwork before we can review it.
So you've gotten no paperwork for these congregate shelters, these quarantine isolation facilities, nothing, zero, zilch?
I have not seen anything or heard of anything.
You don't have like an email or something, or a piece of paper?
I do not. I don't know that it would have crossed my desk, but I can reach back and see. But I don't believe we've gotten anything submitted yet.
Okay.
Usually these things have to. I guess it depends whether they hold them and submit them all at once, or if they submit them monthly. I'm not sure how that process works, other than the fact that documentation has to be provided.
Mm-hmm. And so what sort of documentation has to be provided for federal reimbursement, say for these quarantine isolation facilities?
Well, it would be in the form of, I think we had talked about this over the weekend, but I think we had talked about receipts, invoices from the hotels, cost of the meals, cost of security, and other items that were associated with keeping that facility open and functioning.
Mm-hmm. And that includes personnel working the facility, so government personnel working.
Anything needed in what is called wraparound services.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that's just what you need to keep the facility functioning and effective.
Okay. I know we also talked about over the weekend briefly was the situation with the homeless shelter that the government was planning to open down at the Paseo. And when we last talked on the air, you had mentioned that there were discussions, or the government had approached FEMA regarding the use of or providing tents. Right?
Yes, that's correct.
And so whatever happened with those discussions?
Well, essentially, it revolved around the fact that the tents that we had following Typhoon U2, we had depleted a number of our tents. And the tents that are here on the island are meant for the Pacific, so it would cover Northern Marianas. Some of that might be available for Hawaii if there was a hurricane out there. Some of it's meant for here or American Samoa. So we have a stockpile of tents, and the ask was to provide that stockpile. We have not totally replenished that stockpile yet because there's such a specialty item. So we had indicated to the territory that really wasn't a good option.
And these particular tents were a certain size that weren't necessarily, from what we were discussing, didn't fit the guidelines that Health and Human Services were recommending to be used in the sort of situation that the government of Guam wanted to use them for?
Well, I think there's guidance that comes out from time to time, and we have had, and I don't think the CDC necessarily had this guidance pre-written because this is such a unique disaster, but their new revised guidance, interim guidance, would indicate that they were looking at 12 feet by 12 feet per person.
This is HHS.
Correct.
Okay, right. And the ones that you have in the stockpile
are 16 by 16, so that would have meant one person per tent.
And so I understand HHS and even the Homeless Coalition people, they've recommended a motel apartment type setting over, the baseball field tents. Is that accurate?
I know that they're re-looking at it. I think the fact of the matter is, if it's that coalition that's advising the committee, and it's certainly a committee of folks that are trying to make this happen, I think the recommendation was that they look at that as an alternative for any number of reasons.
Right. Is this something that would be reimbursable?
Yes, it could
be.
Okay,
I just want to make sure. And so just what's the cost share for reimbursement? Is it 75-20?
Generally 75-25.
Generally, is it so? Is it still? I mean, what else would it be?
Right out the gate, it's usually 100% for the first 30 days.
I see.
And then thereafter. Now, there are agreements whenever a disaster is declared. There is something called a federal state or a federal territory agreement, whereby everything is hammered out and then written down, and it's signed by both parties as to how this will unfold.
Frank, I guess going back to, you said FEMA doesn't have a single piece of paper on this, hotel quarantine deal. Is that normal? Because you've been through a lot of disasters, and I'm just wondering, by now, would something have crossed your desk?
I know that it can take a long time for paperwork to flow through, and I've seen sometimes public assistance documents and projects can literally take a decade to complete, depending on the complexity of them. This one I'm not too sure about, and as I said, I have not seen anything in the email or heard of anything being submitted yet.
I see. So it could take as long as the government takes to submit all the paperwork, basically.
Yeah, like I say, it has to start somewhere.
Right, and what's the turnaround typically when the government sends the paperwork for reimbursement?
It depends on the complexity.
I see.
Certainly, it's if you look at it like a chess match or a chess game where you're playing and you make your move and then you hit the bell and then it times for 3 minutes, and then somebody has to get an answer back to you in that next 3 minutes, or you have to make your next chess move in 3 minutes, then you hit the bell.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that goes on.
Yeah.
And, in the case of a natural disaster, when you have reconstruction of highways or things like that, you have to go through the environmental protection and make sure that everything is built to the current code. So that can take some time.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are certainly structures from Katrina that have not been rebuilt yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just sometimes the way it works.
Mm-hmm. Can you just clarify what is a non-congregate shelter? Can it be for homeless?
That would be for, well, in the case of the hotels, that would be for
the quarantine
purposes.
Right.
And in this particular case, I believe they're using it for the same thing.
Okay. For quarantine/isolation facilities.
I'm guessing I would not have a definitive yes or no on that,
Okay.
but it sounds that's the way it would be.
Okay.
Are there like conversations with you, Frank, or the FEMA side where local government says, hey, how do we do this procurement thing? Do you guys provide guidance?
Guidance is provided. Certainly, this is not the first time that we have been here, and it's not the first time that public assistance has been offered on the island for disasters.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine training has taken place.
I would imagine.
The part of the training say that the governor's legal counsel should be handling negotiations for procurement during a pandemic, or maybe it should be left to Guam Homeland Security Office of Civil Defense.
You got me there. I don't know what you want me to say. I'm not sure what the federal state agreement looks like.
Right.
Who is FEMA's, I guess, direct contact with the government of Guam? Is it Charles Esteves? Is it?
Well, it's a person called the governor's authorized representative.
Right. Who's the GAR?
We know it was Tony Babauta, but
we know it was.
He ran into a little bit of difficulty.
Yeah. So right now, those agreements are being rewritten and redrawn and re-signed.
What agreements are rewritten?
Well, because
the
now
federal-state agreement that indicates
who the GAR is.
Correct.
So, do you guys know? Or
I don't, but I imagine that paperwork is being looked at.
Was it something that has to be approved by the feds on who could be? What do you mean?
No,
it's just whoever. It's just whoever the governor. Whoever the governor.
Providing a new name.
I
right.
see.
Yeah.
I see.
Okay.
And a deputy. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's being changed, but you don't know who it's going to be. You haven't heard.
No.
Mm-hmm.
We did. We asked Carlo that, right?
I think so.
Probably. Okay. So was there anything? I mean, without a GAR in place for the last how many days, were there things that could have gotten by us, or is there an interim GAR? How does that whole thing work?
I think there would be a deputy, and work would continue under the deputy until a new agreement is signed.
Okay.
Was there ever a deputy GAR?
I don't know.
Was there ever a deputy GAR?
Yes, there was.
Who was the deputy?
I'd have to go back and ask, but there was a deputy.
We know the main one was Tony Babauta, right?
Yeah, I believe that's the case.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't recall who the deputy?
You want me to throw out some names? Was it maybe Hai Hun?
You caught me flat there.
Okay, but you can just check on that for us, right, Frank?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, appreciate it.
Charles Esteves? That sound familiar?
Well, certainly the name is familiar, but it's. I don't believe that was the deputy.
Okay.
Okay, we'll find out.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Frank, appreciate it.
You're welcome, and we'll provide the updates on what we've got here as far as goods in the hands of the folks at Health and Human Services.
Right, appreciate it. And any update you can give us? Like I said, we try and bring you on every week to kind of just let us know where we're at with FEMA and all that.
Pleasure to do that.
Okay.
Are you settling in okay? Where are you? You work out of the, are you at the JIC, Frank, or are you at the Homeland, or?
We're at the Department of Civil Defense and the Homeland Security Office here on the Hill.
Oh, so you are with the JIC.
Yes, I guess so.
Okay. They're just giving you a table there or something as part of the response, right?
We are working at tables.
Nice.
Oh.
Okay.
Tell everybody we said hi.
No, don't say you know us,
Oh.
Frank. Don't say you know us.
All right. Well, wash your hands, Chris.
Thank you, Frank. Wash your hands.
You
Take
first.
care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, man. FEMA Frank, Guam's favorite.
I want to know who the deputy GAR is.
Yeah, well, let's ask somebody. We're going to take a little break.
Okay.
We're going to ask somebody. It's 9:31.